Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host Raider. And this video is about how I rate irritable bowel syndrome and how the changes as of May 19th, 2024 affected what an irritable bowel rating looks like. So, historically irritable bowel was, the whole digestive tract had to be combined together for the most part. There's this range of or there I should say there was this range of disorders that, like GERD and irritable bowel that couldn't be separately rated. So as of May 19th, 2024, when the VA did their internal change in the 38 CFR Part 4, the VASRD, it actually made it to where irritable bowel could be separately rated. And they put it under diagnostic code 7319. And whenever they allowed us to rate it separately, it got its own set of new rating criteria. Now, they've allowed it to get technically 4 separate ratings, so 30%, 20%, 10%, and if you didn't meet criteria and you just had a diagnosis, you'd get 0%. So even though it says 3, there's technically 4 separate ratings. Now, why this matters is irritable bowel is very easy to rate and it's very hard to rate at the exact same time. And the reason why it can be hard to rate is because when they created the new criteria, they made irritable bowel itself very situationally, made the criteria very frequency based, I would say. So you have it right here where it says you have to have abdominal pain related to defecation at least once during the previous 3 months. And then they have a conditional statement, like I've said beforehand, that every time you see an and, it means that there's more than one part to the rating. So you have to satisfy both parts. If there's 2 or more, you have to satisfy all parts that say and. So for this one, you need the abdominal pain frequency with defecation once during the previous 3 months, and you need 2 or more of the following. Now, the good news about irritable bowel is that irritable bowel is one of the few conditions that there isn't a lot of moving parts on the difference between 10, 20, and 30. Explicitly, it comes down to the frequency to which you have painful defecations. That's it. The number of additional symptoms, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as long as you have 2 of those, and that number is consistent, 2 throughout. So you'll see 2 here, you'll see 2 here, and you'll see 2 here. 2 or more. I mean, more is worse for your body, but better for the rating, but all you need is 2. And they don't need to get worse or anything like that. But for 10%, it's at least once during the previous 3 months. And then for the 20%, what you need is abdominal pain related to defecation at least 3 days per month during the previous 3 months, and then at least 1 day per week during the previous 3 months. So it just has to do with painful defecation, the frequency of it getting worse. That's the difference between 10, 20, and 30%. Now, unlike a lot of other disorders, like say respiratory disorders, there is not a diagnostic test to determine when your defecations are painful. So this is basically word of mouth. And obviously I want to tell you to tell the truth at all times, but how you file your claim and how you present your symptoms to the examiner are going to be the difference between 30, 20, and 10. Okay? Because if you go in there and you have an inconsistent, if you don't tell them about painful defecation, but you go in and talk to them about the stool frequency and change, and you spend, the majority of your claim form talking about that, but do not talk about the frequency of painful defecation, you're going to be 0%. I mean, it's just what it is. Because when you do your claim, you have to focus on what they care about. And me, what I care about as a rater. Like if I'm looking at it, what's the symptoms that matter most? And for irritable bowel, the abdominal pain related to defecation and how frequently that happens is the main nugget of information that you need to be focusing on in your treatment records, on your claim form, and during your examination, okay? And you can't forget about the and portion because it is required too. Even if you had abdominal pain related to defecation at least 1 day per week during the previous 3 months, but you only had one of these things, you're 0%. So it's an all or nothing. When it comes, you have to satisfy all the criteria in order to get to the 10, 20, 30. But thankfully, not a lot of moving parts. So you just, it's not like you have to have all of these things, which would be horrible. It's just the frequency. So I'm going to look at the disability benefits questionnaire for irritable bowel. And this one's kind of an easy one to review. If, as the veteran, if you want to go to the VSO and see if they, gave you the right assessment, it is not like this is an easy one to do. So this is the diagnosis section. And actually, let me go back real quick. The notes section down here talks about if you get granted under 38 CFR 3.317 MUCMES, that's a Gulf War presumptive, quasi-presumptive condition, and you get a functional digestive disorder, so like dyspnea, like functional bloating and constipation, diarrhea. This is just telling the rater that whenever you grant under that, because they're symptoms and not necessarily a diagnosis, that the rater's supposed to grant it under this criteria right here. So that way there's no confusion about it. But back to this. So this is where the functional disorders are. So if you don't have irritable bowel, like if you're a Gulf War veteran and they give you a functional disorder, the diarrhea, like let's say you have diarrhea, they will still rate it under this and you'll still have this criteria. So don't get too freaked out about that. It's, and try to fight for irritable bowel if you have, like, let's say a chronic diarrhea symptom. You'd still fall under this. You'd still qualify under irritable bowel. Everything's fine. So if we scroll down here, this is one of the DBQs where the medical history actually matters. Like, it really does. Because we're dealing with frequency of things, your frequency that your doctor writes in your medical description must match up with the check boxes that they check. So if they say that like you're having every single day of the week, you are having painful stools. And then they come down here and they check the box for at least once, frequency of abdominal pain related to defecation over the past 3 months was at least once. They have to be congruent. So they have to match. So what happens here in the medical opinion has to match down here. If not, and let's say it's not a private DBQ, let's say it's a VES, QTC, LHI, LSGS did the exam, one of the vendors, I would have to send this back because it's incongruent, because one statement might say that you should be 30%. This checkbox might say you should be 10%. And I can't do a tie goes to the veteran when there's conflicting evidence, because clearly the doctor can't have both opinions at the same time. And even if they do, they have to explain them and say, okay, well, historically they had that, now is not the case. This, evidenced by this right here, this is their new presentation of their disorder. This is how it now manifests. I need something like that to calm my QRT error nerves, and I'll send this back, I'll defer it back to development and have them ask the examiner, hey, can you clarify which one of these is true? Is it true that he has it every single day or just once a day? So now this section down here, like this question doesn't really matter, but this section right here is the sum entirety of how IBS is rated, okay? And I hate that pop-up. I'm So in order to get granted, 3A has to be marked yes. Okay. This is another question in which a lot of the time we have to defer back for conflicting medical evidence because your diagnosis section up above will say yes, irritable bowel, box checked. And then it'll come down here and say no. Well, that's incongruent. That those two things can't be true at the same time. So we'll send it back and say, hey, look, did you meet which one's true? Can you just say which one's true and just fix it? And that's a lot of the times when we defer back for exams. If you guys want to know like the behind the scenes of why we defer back, and you're like, hey, look, I had to do 3 exams on this thing. Well, sometimes it's because the examiner just mucked up so badly that they have to physically come in and double check themselves because they don't remember whether or not you did or did not have a certain condition. So that's a little behind the scenes. But for irritable bowel, in order to move forward with granting, this 3A has to be checked. Okay. Now, if we come here to none for frequency of abdominal pain, now remember from my prior explanation, the frequency of abdominal pain is what tells you if you're 0, 10, 20, 30. So if you had none checked right here, 3B is the most important question in this. If you had none checked, that's 0%. If you had at least once checked, and you had 2 of these, and why it will not let me select another thing just annoys me. You have to have 2 of these checked, but 3B will dictate 10%, 20%, 30%. So if you get rated for IBS and you don't believe that you got the most accurate rating, you're going to look here in section 3 and you are going to see what are my check boxes like. Did I have 2 things? Check. Yes. Which box did they check? Oh, they checked this one. That should be 30% with 2 boxes checked. It's easy. That's why I said it's easy. It's easy to review for this. So now how you can go about looking to see, like let's say you have a VAS or QTC exam. I'm going to go back here to this example where the examiner says that you have at least 1 day per week, but they check down here at least once. That can be fuel for you to do a higher level review. Now, what that'll turn into is they'll go, oh, duty to assist error, because the rater did not do their duty to assist the veteran by advocating for them and sending it back and getting it clarified. Now, because we can only do rework exams where we send it back and have the examiner kind of correct their findings on the same claim that the exam is filed on. So sometimes that's where you'll see where you have to go and do a new exam. We can do a reconciliation of medical evidence where we have a third party review it, but typically they'll still want to see you. They'll still want, especially if there's conflicting medical evidence, good doctors want to see you. They want to rule in, rule out things. They want to look at you. But to be quite honest with you, this is it. So it doesn't matter which ones are checked. They all weigh the same. Now, where we get into a little bit of, I don't want to say semantics, but maybe a little bit of frustration is you have an other symptom that's not listed as part of these 6. Unfortunately, because it's explicitly written as these 6 things, other conditions, other side effects, other symptoms of the IBS will not count towards a rating percentage. These symptoms are all that matter, and I'm going to do air quotes, for VA purposes. I can't, even if you gave me the worst symptoms known to man, like I go blind every time I have a painful stool or whatever, like some kind of horrible medical thing that happens. You might be able to do whatever horrible thing that medically happens secondary to it if it's allowed and if it's not pyramiding under 38 CFR 4.14. But it's not going to be something that pushes you to the next level because of how the explicit way that it is worded. We have no wiggle room on this. So we can't bounce back and forth. We can't substitute things. We can't do it. So you want to stay out of the other section for this. And when we go down here, because IBS is a functional disorder for the most part, there's not a lot of diagnostic tests that are going to prove that you have diarrhea. We can't, there's just nothing out there. Surgical procedures don't really matter for it. Small intestine surgery, these are other things. These are for other conditions. So this portion of the DBQ is not important for, in any way, shape, or form for IBS at all. So I wouldn't worry too much about these sections. Sorry, my dog is being loud in the other room. But these are for if you claim these other disorders, then the examiner would fill out these sections. So it might seem like a lot that you might, like, especially if you're doing a private DBQ, you might seem like you have to, fill out a lot of this. But like I said, section 3 is the only section that matters for IBS, and it is literally 3 questions. So that's about all I have for that. Now, let me see here down at the bottom. The remarks section is another area that you want to check for if you're reviewing your own DBQ, and I really suggest you review private DBQs for accuracy. Now, I don't like to talk negatively about private providers that are filling these out. You know, some of them are saints. But what'll happen sometimes, and this is where your private DBQs will get burnt to a degree, is that the examiner, because they don't do it all the time, they'll write inconsistent statements. So up here, they'll write like the diagnosis is fine, and then they'll write a comment up here like, oh, but it's resolved or something. And you're like, number one, no, it hasn't. Number two, what are you talking about? Like, that's going to tank my claim. So you have to, when you get a private DBQ, I would not trust that private provider, okay, fills this thing out accurately. You have to double check. You have to read them. You have to proofread them for them. And everything, to make sure everything that's true is true in there, right? Because examiners are humans. Everybody's a human that I know of so far, but except for post, they're not humans, but I just tease them a lot. But yeah, so I would watch out for that. So unfortunately, section 3 is the only section for IBS. But the same comes down here. I'm going to just do it every single time. Your examiner's NPI number, all their information that they put on here has to match up with their NPI registry. So if you were to look up a provider on the NPI registry, that information for a private DBQ has to match what they put down here. If it doesn't, I'm going to tell you right now, you might as well take the money you spent. You might as well take the paper that the thing was written on, and you might as well just throw it in the fire, because every single rater is going to grab onto that and go, up. It's incongruent. It's not, it doesn't match. So I have not necessarily an instance of fraud, but it's not the same person for us. So we can't, like, it doesn't match up, so we can't take it at face value. So be mindful of that. You have to be your own advocates when you're doing this. I know it's hard. Trust me. Every single day I see the frustration written in the claims, written in the personal statements. I get the frustration more than you know, especially as a veteran myself who has fought this fight myself. But you have to arm yourself with the highest probability of success based upon your evidence. So you have to do all the tips and tricks to maximize how, I made myself giggle there. To maximize how effective your claim is to being received as being, probative. It's on the up and up. It's squared away. Dress right dress, I say a lot of the time. But just make sure that, you're doing those things. Review after you get claims completed. Like, even if you're granted, unless you're at the scheduler maximum, unless they get you at 30%, okay? Let's say they grant you at 20. Review. Review the DBQs, review everything. See if somebody screwed up. I mean, it happens. Go to your VSO, go to whoever you need to go to. But anyway, that's about it for that. Pardon me. I'm trying to think. There was one other thing I wanted to say about this that was very important. Um, it'll come to me. If it does come to me, I'll put out another video. But anyway, I hope this helps. This is Raider, and you have a nice day. Raider out.